this my spot?
And now this.
And now,
Hi, I'm Jim Clark, Visual Arts Manager here at Hopkins Center for the Arts. I'm speaking with 4 Northern California artists today about their exhibition, And Now This. We have Carol Jenkins, Cathy Valentine, Eloise Larson, and Kim Presley. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about the inspiration for this body of work that you put together and the title, And Now This? Where did that come from?
You know, the inspiration was that, you know, there's a lot of bad news in the world, and it can really affect you. So we got together and wanted to know what we should make art about. And I remember a John Oliver quote, "And now this," where he switches from this kind of, you know, icky news into things that are funny. It's like a relief. So that's how we came up with it.
And now this.
You know, and now this.
And now this.
Mm-hmm.
And we each had something that inspired us to take refuge from all that bad news. So we came up with kind of basic themes that we each were drawn to. So for me, it was the beauty and wilderness. That was my respite. And then the others had their respites.
I felt like after COVID, that brought up a lot of, and now this. You know, where did we go during COVID? What did we do? And again, the studio was the respite. So, and my work's quieter, and that was the basis for my work. How about you?
Well, I've been working for a long time and thinking about reality, what really is reality. And, you know, I've noticed that when a picture is hard to look at, people turn away. And so I'm trying to, I guess, point to reality and peel off those assumptions, you know, for what people really think things should look like.
For me, being isolated, listening to a lot of media in a household where we have different political persuasion, the feed was overload from both sides to where I just got to a point of frustration and wanting to turn things off rather than learning more. I got to the point I wasn't really sure where to find a fact. And so my work is in response to that polarity that I see becoming even deeper in today. So hopefully the pieces work together to show that this conflict really goes nowhere and to step back and to examine more information on both sides of all issues.
Each one of you approaches art making, at least it appears this way from viewing the work, with different strategies. Can you each speak a bit about your process? Does it work with a preconceived ideation into studies, or is it primarily direct? And I imagine it's different for all of you. But Kim, could you start with a bit about process?
Yes, then I'm going to take off this jacket because I'm very hot. My process is thinking. That's my hard part of the process is having the idea of trying to express something in a way that other people can understand. And I think I probably spend 90% of my time thinking before I sit down to do it. And when I, in this case, build something or create it, it then becomes more of a mechanical crafting of putting it together. So it's very different, perhaps, than a painter.
So I like to think about when I first touch the artwork, and if I'm really painting, I feel like my brush or whatever I'm using, if I touch it, has all of me in it. Everything, all my experiences. And so that's where I come from. These paintings are about when my mom was dying, and I'm very fortunate to have been able to be with her. So I start there, but you never know where it's going to end.
My work, the other work is how I describe it in the studio, is working on a flat surface with transparencies. So I think in layers, and I try to get that across, to get, well, it's hard to say, but the layers come through in the drawings, but not as effectively as when I work in a wax medium. So this was an exploration to see if I could get any depth with the work.
And you say the other work.
Well, the other work, my studio basically became dedicated to Encaustic, which is a beeswax and resin medium that you work hot. So you're building up layers. So I will work it, I will draw, put more clear on it, draw some more clear. So when you look in, you can see through. So working on a flat surface had its challenge for me, basically.
I think some of us really did do work that was different for this particular show. Like this work was a different process for me. Usually I start kind of directly. I'm just putting down big marks, big shapes, and then I see where it goes. But because I'm so influenced by my love of wilderness, there's always these detailed areas that kind of remind me of the variety of nature, and then these calmer areas. But in this case, I did that more directly. I went out into the landscape, I sketched, I got home and into my studio and I cropped them, I collaged them, and then I had these little small collages of disrupted landscape, and then from there I used those as a reference for these bigger pieces. And these have collage too, which I integrated in. So these are much more landscapey than I usually do. Mine are usually a little bit more abstract, but that's the way this process, it lended itself to a more direct landscape look.
That word disruption, when you said that, it kind of clicked with me as an outside viewer. The subject matter is all seemingly quite disparate, but there's this underlying through thread that initially I was thinking was palette and texture from a formal sense, but there does seem to be a sense of disruption in all of the work that I think I felt, but I didn't acknowledge until you said that word. And we might have stumbled into that. But was it a conscious effort to weave some similarities in, or did you, all four of you, recognize that those similarities existed before you pitched this show? Like, how did that come about?
I don't think we tried to have anything that was a thread in terms of the actual work.
Yeah.
I don't remember us talking about that, but I think that just the experience of trying to paint during COVID and all the craziness, it seems to me that disruption and mending and, you know, trying to cope with hard stuff in a way that also left us with some joy, you know, in life. I think probably those things would come together, at least they did for me.
Yeah, and I feel like we stayed very separate.
Oh, really?
In our studios. It wasn't, we talked, we met, say, monthly and would talk a bit, but I felt like it was all quite individual of what we were doing. And in terms, I like that word disrupted too. I think that was a good statement for the COVID time. I don't feel like my work was necessarily disrupted. I would like it. I like disruption. I feel like that pushes me into a place that I don't know. And I really like that to come out in my work. And maybe it did come through, like you say, from the time we're living in.
And you were challenged. I mean, I was putting collage on my pieces in a way I don't usually do. And so every time I put a piece of collage on, it would disrupt the composition, and I'd have to try to integrate it back again. And so it left sort of unexpected areas, but also, you know, it was disrupted, and you were challenged. So
yeah,
that
you're right.
is a disruption.
You're right.
What I find fascinating about that is that we were all forced to respond to the disruption of COVID. The four of you speak of how you look to your work as a respite, but here you were integrating that same disruption into the process in a way that maybe there was an enhanced sense of authority or a way to wrestle that disruption to your will. I don't know.
Well, you know, the paintings that I started of my mother, they were just very usual. You know, thick paint. I thought, well, these will be done, you know, in a month or so. And I worked on them, I think, for probably a couple of years. And they started as kind of realistic paintings of my mother. And then I thought, wow, these are bad. So I started scraping things away, which I don't normally do. And I also used this brush cleaning medium and scrubbed things off. And, you know, then I saw what was left and went from there. It was a fun process for me. You know, during COVID, my mother died, and it was a bit of a disruption. She was 100, so it wasn't like, you know, she died too early or what, and she's very completed when she died. So I just started with some photos of her. I would FaceTime with her, and I just do screenshots while I was FaceTiming with her. And from those, I picked up images and made paintings. So, and you know, it just comes from my relationship with my mother. And we didn't have anything left to settle. So I guess these are about my relationship with my mother, as well as with the surface of the work.
Eloise, when you say they were initially bad, what's your primary metric for goodness or badness? Like, what were you responding to? Did they not capture a feeling or a likeness or an X factor that we can't name? What was the badness, and how did you change that?
Well, first of all, I think badness is a bad word when you're talking about art. And also good, because once you say good or bad, you made a judgment.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I came in the studio and felt like, I can't go anywhere more with this. I don't know what to do. So I would sit with it, or I'd leave it alone. The paintings over here on the wall, I learned to just walk away from what I was doing. And when I came back, I mean, I think they weren't finished. And a great surprise was when I came back, they looked like they were finished. You know, so I think that's the part of looking at a piece, because if it doesn't feel complete or it has more problems, to solve, then, I go on.
And are the problems, are they primarily related to the content or the form, or are they intermixed?
Well, I think they're obviously related to the content by, what she ended up looking like. But I really pay attention to color and, to value in my paintings. And I've done that for such a long time. I think that it's just part of when I paint what happens. But yeah, that's I kind of look at them, and if there's an area that, doesn't seem like the problems are solved in, then I somehow respond to it.
I read a really interesting piece by a writer. He talked about his art being compelled by dissatisfaction, which I think is maybe what you're getting at, like what makes us want to keep going with a work? How do we know it's finished, or when do we think it's, when are we, dissatisfaction does seem to be part of the process. Like, no, it's either not interesting enough, it's not unexpected enough, it's not what I meant to say. It's something creates dissatisfaction, but I think it is hard to name, when do you cross that line into satisfaction? And sometimes you're satisfied one night and you come back in the morning and you're like horrified. And sometimes you're dissatisfied one night and you come back and it's finished in the morning. So it's an interesting concept.
I wouldn't refer to it as dissatisfaction. I think it's more like, I have a problem. How am I going to solve it? And not, I'm dissatisfied. You know what I mean? So, I've been painting a long time, and I've kind of learned that, there's going to be a process as you go, and you just have to keep going with it. And like I said, when all the problems are solved, then the painting is finished.
Kim, in your work and process, would you call it dissatisfaction? Do you rub up against dissatisfaction, or?
Well, like I explained, my problem, my challenge is the idea. And that can go back and forth, and that just depends on when the deadline is.
Sure.
I don't know how, all of a sudden, then I know. When I hear, the painters talk about going back in, making the change that they can see the next morning, that's not going to happen probably with me, because I already know what this is going to look like. I know exactly what it's going to look like, and it's building it. But yeah, I run into my dissatisfaction about something, and I can't go back and alter a small part of it. It's the idea didn't work well. In fact, I had a fourth piece to bring, and we don't have it here, because I knew really when I left, now it's not going to work. I sent part of it, and this is a conceptual idea where you want to have someone connect with it on a subtle level so they can see themselves. And it was the worst thing it could be, corny. But when it was finished, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like so in-your-face obvious statement that there's no subtlety or nuance in this at all. So it's not here. I couldn't go back and tweak it. It was once I really saw it. It was true. It was saying the message, but it wasn't the right way to say it.
Sure.
So.
I don't know, is corny that bad? Sometimes it might play pretty well here in the Midwest. We are the land of growing corn. And relatedly, the four of you are currently living in Northern California, and I know some of you are transplants there and some homegrown. But do you find that sense of place is an important part of your artistic practice?
It is for me. Yeah, it is for me. I have a relationship with the land where I live. And sometimes when I moved, I used to live in the Bay Area, and when I moved from there, I went back and forth up to Mount Shasta and the Bay Area for a long time. But when I finally moved to Mount Shasta, people asked me, how can you stand to leave your community in the Bay Area? And it was hard. But one of the things that it's not always easy to understand is that I had a relationship with the land as well as people. And that is a very powerful relationship for me. So yeah, my pieces are definitely informed by what's around me, and especially about wild places. I'm really drawn to wilderness. It feels like it is bigger than me. It offers a kind of wonder when I'm in it, and that definitely compels me to want not to paint specific places, but to play with that color, the texture, the movement of what's around me. I want to kind of immerse myself even more than just hiking through it, although I love hiking through it.
Sure, sure.
My work isn't affected by place, I don't feel like. I always feel like my work is an internal dialogue. It changes, but very, very slowly. A little bit of external aspects in my life obviously come through, but it's very internal. It's like I look at a piece of paper and it's blank. It doesn't necessarily intimidate me, but I try and think of, what am I trying to say?
Sure.
And it's really deep in me. It's a much more, I always think of them as emotional landscapes, is a way I would put it.
Cathy, do you think you'd make the same work if you lived in Hopkins?
Yes, absolutely, I do. It's my voice, it's the way I work. I am influenced by small amounts. In my personal life, I have a husband who's dealing with an illness, and that comes through. So it's something that is very close to me, but I take it with me wherever I go. When I travel, if I'm working in a sketchbook, or if I look back into a sketchbook, it's like, there it is again. So there is this thread of emotional landscape that follows me, is the way I would see it. Yeah.
Well, I moved from Fairbanks, Alaska to Northern California about 20 years ago. And of course, in Fairbanks, you could be isolated anywhere you wanted to. And, it was very related to, snowy landscapes, 50 below, those kinds of things. I have to say I really miss them. And so I moved to Northern California, and we live in the mountains. I live at about 4,000 feet. I have a forest all around me, and streams right by my house. And for me, that allows me, I guess how I'm related to the landscape is it allows me to work without a distraction, I live a few miles out of town, not many, 8 or 10, but to get up and go into town really distracts me from the studio. So it allows me a space to just be with the work. I can walk in the morning and work on something. I sometimes work late at night, and it allows me isolation or space to just really see my experience and bring my experience to my work.
And I don't want to diminish the powerful root of that, but I do want to touch on, did you just say that essentially you live in paradise? I mean, the four of you live in paradise, but you miss the snowy isolation of Fairbanks?
Well, I would miss where I live too,
Yeah.
It's just, wherever you are, I'm pretty satisfied, and it's a different thing. Fairbanks was also, very satisfying, and the things that, we did, and, the snowy winters. And now where we live, we can walk out our door and, hike up a mountain, that kind of thing, which suits us, having lived in Alaska for so long. When I first came down to Mount Shasta, I was attending a retreat at a Buddhist abbey, and it was like, oh, this is where I belong. This is a good home. I mean, it just felt connected, and it just worked out that way. That and the land I live on, I feel connected to. And for older people like me who are retiring, I feel very lucky to know, this is where I am. I know where I am, and this is where I should be. A lot of people don't know what geography they should, they would be attracted to or feel comfortable in.
Sure. Looking back at the move 20 years ago, did it have an overt effect on your work? Do you recall?
When I first moved here, I couldn't work. And so, I come from, working a lot, showing a lot in Fairbanks and other places in Alaska. And then, I moved here, and, it was quite an ordeal. As far as, packing everything up. I moved 1,000 pounds of artwork. So I just kind of didn't make art for a while. And, I had a Buddhist teacher then who said, you'll know when it's time when the brush is in your hand. Don't make a big deal of it. And, so, and I had been working as a high school teacher, 60 hours a week at least. And so when I came, I just had all this time with no structure. So the first year, I think, I pretty much sat looking out the window a lot, just waiting to know what my structure was or what I'd be doing. And sure enough, it came around to, this is what I'll do in the studio. And, it always changes. Seems like I'm never doing the same thing over and over. I love materials, and I always like to push them. What can I do with them, and ideas, so, yeah.
Cool. Kim, how about you? Sense of place, is it important?
It has never been. It's going to be.
How so?
Well, like Carol, I'm a land steward up in the forest, and this last year has been an intense learning time for me as far as fire mitigation, thinning forest, things that I never thought would be something that would be my thing to do in life, and really, really like it. And I was talking to Eloise. We have another show coming up next month, how much work have I done? None. But I have my ideas. And one, for the first time, is really brought forth from the forest, because I was telling her, well, I'm really right in the middle of this. And she was right. Once I was in the landscape, I looked around, and I did have something to say. And again, it's not going to be the marks and the movement in that personal interaction with the medium. I'm going to make something. I'm building it. I have all of my materials ordered and cut and ready to go, and I will start. So I guess that's a variation for me, as at least the where I'm starting the work from. Process looks the same.
Fascinating. So coming up, Kim and Eloise, you have a show. So have you all worked together before this show? How do you know each other?
In various configurations.
Sure.
Like Cathy and I have done shows. I mean, we've all had different configurations, but we haven't all worked together in a foursome.
Okay.
I think that's right.
That is right.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was the first time?
Yeah.
And this body of work was made during COVID for this show, is that fair to say? No.
No, 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 this is what led me, this is what the next thing in the studio was to do. So I started, started working on those.
Yeah.
And then the other pieces, I was teaching a workshop in Wairika, and I was, basically showing them how I build a painting. And so I had, a few minutes in between each thing. And so the first painting of my mother, I painted it in like an hour or two, which is so unusual for me. And I was just thrilled. So then I tried the next painting, but it didn't. It took a lot more than an hour. Sure. So it was great, though, to have that experience. And I think it led to being able to walk away instead of getting in there and hammering it. So, yeah.
I did paint these pieces for this show.
Yeah.
I had this idea of what I wanted to do, but then there was this deadline, and it was really great because I may not have done 8. I might have, actually I did 9, but one of them sold already. But I might not have done as many, and so that's the wonderful thing about shows. There's a way of just kind of keeping going until you have a body of work that you want to show. So I loved having that deadline myself.
Not to be too clumsy about it, but it's a bit of a carrot, maybe, and also the pressure of the deadline. I mean, Kim spoke of working to deadline. Is that fair? That characterization?
Well, I'm always working.
Yeah.
But I'm not always deciding to do an entire body of work. Sometimes I'm trying this, I'm trying that, I'm experimenting. So that was that was definitely the carrot and the stick of I want an entire body of work to be able to show together. So yeah, I like that.
Mine was, it was done for this show. And part of the reason was I wanted to work on paper. And to be absolutely honest, I wanted to work on paper so that the shipping wasn't exorbitant.
That's a reasonable driver.
Yeah, and I mean, if these pieces were all done in encaustic, they would have weighed a lot more, and shipping has really gone up. Working on paper was a revisit for me. I haven't worked on paper in quite a while, and it was very exciting. I really liked it. In fact, I want to continue working with some paper. It's difficult because I make such a mess in both ways, in the wax and on the paper. But wax and paper, unless it's an intentional combination, are a hard one. And paper, I try and keep it cleaner, but I make a mess. So and I have a very small studio. So it's going to be interesting to see if I can pull that off. I also like working small. A lot of people, I really love the intimacy of small pieces. These are not necessarily small pieces for me. I mean, I could cut those in quarters and make very small pieces and probably be very satisfied. Where a lot of people, I've had people say, can't you work big? Well, it is difficult with encaustic to work big. But I could see working on paper in a more intimate way. So, and yeah, they were done for Hopkins with a deadline.
With the deadline.
With a deadline. That helps, it does. I agree with Carol.
My wall piece and the pedestal piece were made before COVID. And the table, as you know, was made here.
It was made
Couple
here,
days ago.
bespoke. Yes.
But again, I had it planned out. I knew what I needed, and the collection of the bumper stickers, which I scanned into a large Photoshop document or file. I had that printed, and I knew that that was good to go. I knew my exact dimensions, and from that, I knew what to order from Lowe's online, not knowing about, do I get to give a plug to the best hardware store in the world across the street? Helped out a lot.
I think it's fair to say that's Hans
It
Hardware
is.
here in Hopkins.
It is.
We can make
It
a
is
plug.
wonderful.
It's great.
So that was created for this show.
Being from elsewhere, are there some impressions during your short time here for install? And I know that you've taken in some of the art offerings that the Twin Cities area has to offer. Are there any impressions you have of Minnesota or the Twin Cities area?
I have been so impressed. I think I've said this with the support for the arts here. It's very heartening. And we had unbelievably helpful volunteers to help us hang this show. We couldn't have done it without everyone. We had a lot of people all working with us, and they were wonderful. So I have been totally impressed with the commitment to art that I am seeing here. And I know that I'm only seeing a portion of it, but I've been impressed. Yeah.
It's actually only in Hopkins.
Yeah, of course.
We'll edit that out. Or not, wink, wink. Anyone else with impressions?
I think everyone is very friendly and helpful, including you. Thank you very much for bringing your chop saws so I could finish my table from your house. It's beautiful. The really nice city development here, good food. Yeah. Going back with a good report.
During the storm that we encountered, the hosts of our Airbnb came up and knocked on the door so we could go down to the basement. That was new for us, and incredibly lovely that they were trying to protect us. No tornadoes came, but we were down in the basement huddled all together.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I loved hearing the rain. I was saying to Eloise this morning, California is becoming a desert, even in the north. And years ago, we had rain. It's become a rarity. And it was just so wonderful to hear. And there is, even in the city, it feels like a wildness. Birds, wildlife, it's lovely. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in Northwest Iowa, and when I grew up, Minneapolis was the big city, even though it wasn't nearly as big as it is now. And one of my favorite things this whole trip was listening to, these people discover the Midwest, which is, like you say, corn, soybeans, lots of flat fields. And I grew up with it. I didn't think anything about it. So, yeah, it was really fun, the comments from you. And the tornado warning, when the siren went off, they were all like, what is that? What is that? And I kind of knew, we hadn't been watching the news, but I kind of thought, this means bad weather. So I enjoyed that. Mm-hmm.
Kim and Eloise, you have a show coming up. I want to ask all of you, where else might we see you work and what's next? So you've already teased that. If you could tell us anything more.
I actually have a curator, I have a gallery, and this gallery, it's called Dab Art, and she has several. So there's one in Ventura, California, one in Los Angeles, one in Mexico City,
Yeah.
and one in Austin, and then she's beginning a new one in Florida. And yeah, it's just great to be on her roster because she doesn't want me to change my work, you know. And you know, that happens a lot with a gallery. They want you to sell your work, and you know, my work isn't the kind of thing you'd want to hang in your living room. So, well, maybe for some people. But yeah, so it can be seen there as well. Mm-hmm.
I don't have a website or gallery, and we have a community gallery in Wairika, where I live. These guys are 20 minutes away, 20 miles away, and it's been open for 13 years, and you know, maybe 3 times a year there's an open call to a theme, and that's my kind of thing a lot. Not all the time, but I'm a call and response sort of inventor. I'll hear this idea and think, oh, I don't know what oh, wait a minute. And then I think of an idea.
Sure.
And so I'll put something into the show, and that's pretty much how I work. We do have a third artist in this upcoming show, which has the title Ripped and Rewoven. And so it's, you know, renewal in almost every way you can imagine. So we're working on that theme, and that will be on the internet. It opens June 10th, maybe.
In the name of the community gallery again?
Liberty Arts.
All right.
Yeah.
And so folks can find that on the web.
Yeah, that's on.
Dynamite.
What's next?
There's Pence.
There's Pence. Next year, I have a show in Davis, California, with 3 other people.
I'm one of them.
2. Oh, 3. Yeah, there is 3. And that feels so far away to me that I'm not, well, no, I am thinking of work for that. I have a small gallery in Ashland, Oregon. It's like Eloise says, though, when I'm working work for the gallery, it's not keeping up with my changing in my art. And I'm finding it pretty difficult because some of the work I'm working on right now, or before this, was rather disturbing. And I really liked it. And yeah, and much more textural, coming off the surface with the wax, building structural surfaces underneath, very organ-like, internal organ-like.
Sure.
And incorporating a lot of different materials. And some look bandagey, some look relatively bloody, not horribly so, but I find them very, very interesting, and they're really challenging me. If I took that up to my gallery, I'm not sure what they would say. They may say, Cathy, I'm not sure it would sell. Yeah, so, and I do have a website. It's outdated. It's something that's on my mind to bring current, but I haven't done it, so.
Websites
But
are
it's
hard
there.
to keep up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it is there. So there is some way to see some. It's older work, but it's a lot of encaustic, which it surprises me. People are not aware of encaustic, at least that I found here last night in talking to people. There's one lady that I spoke with that was aware of it, and I see it all over the place. But that's what I search out too, to look at, and so that's where I am with what's next. I'm looking forward to going back to the more sculptural pieces. Yeah.
So I have that same Pence show in a year, but I also have a smaller show. Pence is a gallery in Davis, California. So I have a smaller show coming up there in July. And I show some of my work. I go back and forth between Berkeley and Mount Shasta for many reasons, but one is art, because there are more places to show work in the Bay Area. Sure. So I have work in a design store, Taylor Blue Design. I have a website that I have been keeping up, caroljenkinsart.com, and I'm on Instagram. So I do try to get my work out there. It's, someone once said that, you need to spend 50% of your time doing art and 50% of your time doing all the admin stuff, and I resisted that for so long. It just was hard. But I don't do 50% admin, but I have been trying to get my work out in the world. So, and I have other shows, but they're further away.
Dynamite. Because at least two of you discussed how there's a friction between what you want to pursue and what commercial galleries will sometimes be accepting of, or how much control they might assert. Related to that, what does success look like to you? And that could be in a piece or career-wise. Just what are you looking for primarily out of your work?
Well, I, besides putting my work out there through social media as best I can, I send out a monthly blog. And a lot of my work sells through that, because I have now a pretty wide, pretty big audience. And I actually love selling my work. And it's because for me, success is not about how many pieces I sell. It's not like I'm making a living from my work. But I love that people want to have the work in their homes. And it moves me. And I love having other people's work in my home. So that, to me, it's not about, fame or money. It's really about people connecting to my work and my connecting to the people who want it. So that is, for me, what success is.
I think my work is about problem solving. And if I can solve a problem, then I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have that gallery. She puts me on Artsy. I have a website. And I don't pay attention, really, to any of those things. Somebody who takes care of my website. I have, my dealer taking care of selling things. Mm-hmm. And I've always found I've never, been big on selling my work. I mean, I've been painting since 1979, and I think what I'm big on is, instead of selling, is just being honest on the canvas or, painting. And I guess, if you have to pay attention to it, or like Carol said, 50% of the time, I don't live long enough, to do that. So, yeah. And I always had a job, so I didn't have to sell anything, but yeah.
Yeah. For me, at this time in my life, success is changing, I find. Growing, being able to have my work grow, to have it change, to have it not get stagnant, I think is one of the biggest things that I want. And to me, and so again, success would be an internal thing. I do love sharing it. I love it when someone wants to live with something. That's I'm always in awe of that. That I'm in awe, and I feel like it's such an honor if somebody wants a piece. But it's being able to change. That's the biggest, most important thing to me right now. Yeah.
I think for me, satisfaction, or why I do this, is the hope that someone looks at it and considers. They just think this might be true. That's all.
Awesome.
Isn't it great how different everyone is?
Yeah. I mean, we've done a number of these, and they're always revelatory. Carol, Cathy, Eloise, Kim, thank you so much for sharing your work
Thank
with
you.
our community.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
It's a beautiful gallery.
Yeah,
It's a
it really is a
beautiful
fabulous
building.
space.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I'm Jim Clark, Visual Arts Manager here at Hopkins Center for the Arts. We've been speaking with Carol Jenkins, Cathy Valentine, Eloise Larson, and Kim Presley about their exhibition, And Now This, on view from May 12th to June 18th, 2022.